Murata Manufacturing 6981 Beginner's Guide. Imagine the tiny ceramic chip inside your phone that lets it hold a stable charge while you scroll, or the same kind of chip stacked by the thousands inside an AI server that trains the chatbot you used yesterday. That's the world Murata Manufacturing lives in, the unglamorous, almost invisible parts that make every modern electronic device actually work. This is a beginner guide, educational only, so we can understand what the business does before you ever dig into investing. So, what does Murata actually do? Murata is a Japanese electronic components maker, and its single biggest product is something called an MLCC, a multi-layer ceramic capacitor. A capacitor is a tiny part that stores and releases small amounts of electricity to keep a circuit stable, kind of like a shock absorber for the flow of electrons. Murata is the global #1 in MLCCs with roughly 40% of the world market, and capacitors alone are about 51% of company revenue, around 936 billion yen, which is close to $6 billion in just one product category. On top of that, Murata sells 5 other things: inductors and EMI filters, another 12% of revenue, which are small parts that smooth out electrical noise, high-frequency communications modules at 22%, which help your phone talk to cell towers, batteries and power supplies at 8%, functional devices like sensors at 6%, and a small others bucket. Add it all up and FY 2025 revenue was about 1.83 trillion yen, roughly $12 billion, with operating profit of about 282 billion yen. To picture the business model, think of it as a sandwich. On one side, suppliers feed Murata raw materials, specialty ceramics like barium titanate, precious metals like palladium, nickel, and copper for the electrodes, and battery chemicals. Murata then uses decades of know-how to layer those ceramics, stack them, bake them in furnaces, and turn them into finished components. On the other side, the customers, smartphone makers like Apple and Samsung, auto parts giants like Bosch and Denso, AI server builders selling into NVIDIA-powered data centers, and EV makers like Tesla and BYD, all buy those components by the billions. The application mix is roughly 36% communications, 26% mobility, which means cars, and 17% computers, with data centers being the fastest growing piece inside that computers bucket. So who does Murata compete with, and how does it win? The answer is actually 2 answers, because Murata has a wide moat in its core MLCC business, but only a narrow moat at the group level. Let me unpack that. A moat, competitive advantage, the thing that keeps other companies from catching up, in MLCCs comes from process know-how plus scale. Stacking hundreds of paper-thin ceramic layers and getting them to fire perfectly is genuinely hard, and Murata has been doing it for decades. Its main competitors there are TDK, Samsung Electromechanics, Teo Yuden, and Kyocera, all of them smaller in MLCCs. Pricing on basic MLCCs is fairly commoditized, meaning the products are interchangeable enough that buyers shop on price. But the high-end versions, the small-size, large-capacity MLCCs that go into AI servers, command a premium, and Murata leads the world in that premium mix. The narrow part of the moat shows up outside of capacitors. In the high-frequency module business, the chips that handle your phone's radio signals, Murata is up against tougher rivals like Qorvo, Skyworks, and Broadcom, and it has lost some ground there. In batteries, Murata is a smaller player versus Panasonic, LG, and CATL. In sensors, it competes with Bosch, ST, and NXP. So the picture is, dominant in the boring, high-margin ceramic parts, a respectable challenger everywhere else. What are the key drivers for the business over the past 5 years? 3 big chapters. Chapter 1 was the 2020 to 2022 MLCC supercycle. The world rolled out 5G smartphones, EVs started electrifying, and IT, the Internet of Things, meaning everyday devices getting connected to the Internet, all began stuffing more capacitors into every product. Since MLCCs are about half of Murata's revenue, this boom pushed operating margin, the share of every revenue dollar that becomes profit, above 24%, the highest level in years. Chapter 2 was the 2023 to 2024 correction. Smartphone demand softened worldwide, customers worked through extra inventory they had built up, and earnings dropped meaningfully. Murata used that quieter period to diversify. It bought Sony's battery business back in 2017, kept building out power modules, and pushed harder into sensors so it would be less dependent on phones the next time around. Chapter 3 is happening right now, and it's about AI. Server-grade capacitors went from 6% of revenue to 10% of revenue in 1 year, with data center sales up 74% year-over-year to about 177 billion yen, which is a little over $1 billion. The order book at the end of FY 2025 was running well ahead of shipments, meaning customers were booking more than Murata could deliver. Battery turned profitable for the first time. And management announced a 150 billion yen share buyback, the largest in company history. To wrap up, Murata is the world's biggest maker of a tiny ceramic component called an MLCC that goes inside almost every electronic device on the planet, with a smaller business in modules, batteries, and sensors riding alongside it. As a learner, the thing to keep an eye on is whether server-grade capacitor demand keeps accelerating into the next few quarters and whether Murata's weaker module business can stop being a drag on the group. As always, this is educational only and not investment advice.